Know your enemy and know yourself, and in 100 battles you shall never be in peril. Sun Tzu, famous Chinese military commander. Now, I want to start with that because, given the topic and my audience, it might be relevant. It might not be, but it might be. Today, you see, I'm going to cover a defense studies topic, strategic depth. What does it mean, and why does Israel specifically have to worry about this more than most other nations? Someone suggested this map in a comment to an earlier video I made. Obviously, he suggested it as a joke, but analytically speaking, let's for some reason take him seriously. This would definitely solve Israel's strategic depth problem, geopolitics, economics, and defense studies, the topic of today's video here. They all go hand in hand, so I cover all three to some extent or another on this channel. Now, strategic depth, for those who don't know, is a nation's ability to defend itself in the event of an invasion. A nation with high strategic depth is basically one that, if invaded, can fall back, can resist the invasion, and can eventually push back against their invaders. The idea being, an invader faces a very difficult fight because to take out fully, permanently, the administration of the government they're fighting, of the nation, sorry, that they are fighting, and the military of the defending nation, to fully end them, the invader needs to probably take and hold an amount of territory that's going to be insanely costly. The higher the strategic depth of a country, the more costly it is for an attacker to try and take it and hold it. I'll give you an example. Russia, arguably the country with the most strategic depth in the world. I say arguably because there's other contenders. If Russia was invaded, let's say from the west, from the rest of Europe somewhere, the invader would have to travel through vast tracts of land spanning thousands of kilometers, and the attacker would have to maintain supply lines through that whole mess, through that whole enemy territory, keep reinforcing the attacking military, and then hold actually the territory, likely facing local militia, citizen resistance, who might, citizens, ordinary civilians who might take up arms against the invader, etc., etc. Now, Russia is huge. The government, even if Moscow, the capital of Russia, even if Moscow was invaded, for example, the Russian Federation's leadership could lift and shift to the east to maintain command and control capabilities and lead the defense of the nation. I would say lift and shift, and I can imagine in my head a map of Russia and Moscow, and maybe an icon representing the government. I lift and shift it and then drop it, but zero animation budget, so just imagine it. Okay, now if the attackers cannot secure a total victory in Russia, in this hypothetical analogy, within a couple of seasons, they have the deep Russian winter to worry about. Something that would exacerbate any supply line issues tenfold and mean that the country is probably not going to be able to hold on to their gains. Now, France tried invading Russia once, didn't quite go as they planned. Napoleon Bonaparte, the emperor, French emperor, got Russia slapped so hard that he had to go crawling back to Paris with the shattered remains of his once great grand army, as he called it. The Germans tried it as well during World War II. They got Russia slapped so hard that the Second World War ended. Sorry. I wrote that and I'm laughing at my own joke. Now, what started with German... sorry. Let me try. Let me try it again. What started with German Tiger and Panther panzers, German tanks heading east towards Russia, ended with Rush. I'm just messing up my language. It ended with Russian Kliment Voroshilovs and Iosif Stalin's Russian tanks heading west straight to Berlin. Fun fact: the Russians showed up in Berlin and took the city from the German forces before the Americans and the British showed up. But if you watch Hollywood, obviously, Saving Private Ryan, D-Day, they landed in Normandy and they pushed straight to the German camp. Nah, the Russians are already there. So, in fact, the Russians were there. They were able to fully take control of the city, but when the Allies, the Western powers, America and the UK, came under the agreements between the Allies, the UK, France, Russia, US, Russia, under the agreements they agreed to, said, okay, fine, come. It's very funny because you would think that the Americans won the war. Anyway, my point is, Russia's strategic depth keeps the country near unbeatable because of what the attackers have to face. It's so deep that they have to go and stay and maintain it and actually completely annihilate the Russian administration. And Russian administration within their own territory can keep falling back, and the attacker has to commit more and more and more until eventually they lose, they fail, they give up. Historically, that's what's happened. Now, if you define beating, an administration as taking the capital and forcing the administration to agree to an unconditional surrender, it's very hard to beat Russia in that sense, and any other country with very good strategic depth. Now we move on to the title of this video. We move on to Israel, America's darling, right? Israel's strategic depth doesn't really exist, for better or worse. I'm just giving you the facts. I'm not saying I'm happy about that situation or sad. Now, it's not likely, by my assessment, anytime soon, but as an academic hypothetical exercise. We just went through an exercise where we talked about Russia being invaded, right? It's an academic exercise to understand geopolitics. Let's academically exercise our muscles again. An invading force into Israel, how would that look? An invading force from Egypt's Sinai desert, for example, needs to cross a mere 100 kilometers, by some estimates 70 kilometers as the crow flies, to get from the Sinai border of Egypt to Tel Aviv, the Israeli capital, or to Jerusalem. I believe same situation, 100 kilometers. That's an hour's journey, guys, in a fast car, right? An hour's journey going right like 60 miles an hour. From Jordan's border to Jerusalem, half an hour's journey. It's about 30 kilometers. Bruv, you can walk 30 kilometers. It's a long walk, but you can, I'm saying, right? 20 miles. Going from one side of, I live in London, going from one side of London to the other side of London takes longer than that. It's actually a longer distance. Literally, the city of London is wider, within the confines of the M25, which is a highway ring we have around London. And, one side to another of London is longer than the distance from the Jordanian border in the east of Israel to the Israeli, symbolic capital, the cultural capital, Jerusalem. So there is no real strategic depth in this country. They don't have depth. There's no fallback. There's a fight. If we lose, the country is at the mercy of the invaders. If someone invades, obviously there's the Samson option and nuclear deterrence, but we're talking about just looking at the geostrategic implications of a ground assault, right? Now, if someone invades, or multiple states from multiple directions invade, I'm not suggesting anything, I'm just saying, there's no place for the Tel Aviv/Jerusalem government to fall back to, right? Maybe Florida or Washington or Eastern Europe, I guess. They can fall back there, I suppose. But not within Israel, right? Now, why do I mention this? Because I actually agree, hot take, bear with me, okay? Fasten your seatbelts. I actually agree on something with the Israeli state. We agree, me and Israel. Quite crazy. As an analyst, I agree with Israel that it makes sense for Israel to want strategic depth. It makes sense for them, right? I'm not supporting them. I'm saying in their shoes, I understand completely. In an attempt to secure the survival of their administration, they need more strategic depth. What they have is just not cutting it. It's geostrategically a completely sound, fair position to take by their state to say, we need more land. If we want to survive, be able to resist an invasion, they'll say, God forbid, or, I don't know. Maybe they'll say, God forbid, some of them are religious, I hear. Now, one of the ways to prevent a successful invasion is to build strategic depth. And for that, we need more land. That's what they'll say. We need maybe you could call it a greater Israel. That's an analytical conclusion that I too can arrive at. Now, just because you understand someone does not mean you agree with them. One can understand the reasons of a state for wanting what they want, and they can say, I understand you, but I still oppose you. If anything, one could say, I understand you, but I oppose you more now that I understand what you need for your survival, what others have to suffer so that you may live. Giving me Voldemort vibes here. Only I can live forever. Now, I'm just giving you the analysis, right? The learning experience. That's what I'm here for. And then you might say, for example, you might say, I will use the understanding I have to overcome those I disagree with. That's on you, whatever side you sit on any matter, really. As the famous, once again, I finish on this, as the famous Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu once said, I, I forgot how I said it. 几百战不到. No, it took like 8 takes the first time, and I flopped it this time. Anyway, know your enemy and know yourself, and in 100 battles you shall never be in peril. I hope you enjoyed this defense topic review, where we talked about strategic depth. And for the unbiased news and analysis without the Western spin, I'm Mahfouz, and I'll see you on the next one. Damn it, I really did. I felt so gassed that I got the pronunciation at least decent, I think. Some Chinese guy's gonna come and say, Mahfouz, you failed. You did really bad at the Chinese. You should stick to Russian and English, and maybe Arabic, and Bengali, and Hindi. I'm still learning. One take.